There are times in medicine when everything we've learned from textbooks simply isn't enough. Times when protocol fails, when experts doubt, and when it seems there's nothing left to do. This is the story of a nurse who faced exactly that situation, a case that defied everything the medical team believed possible. When the chief of surgery declared it impossible, she refused. What happened over the next 3 hours would change not only one patient's life, but the way an entire hospital team would view the limits of medicine. Stay until the end, because this story will make you question everything you think you know about courage, intuition, and the true power of nursing. And in the comments, I want to know, have you ever witnessed something that seemed impossible become reality? My name is Helena Pierce, and for 17 years I worked as a trauma nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. It wasn't an easy road to get here. I grew up in a Polish immigrant family in Brooklyn, where my mother cleaned offices at night, and my father worked construction during the day. They barely spoke English, but they understood the value of education. I studied under the dim light of the kitchen, while my mother sewed clothes to sell on weekends. We didn't have much, but we had dreams. When I decided to study nursing at New York University, my family sold our only car to pay my first tuition. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously during college: waitressing in the mornings, clinical, assistant in the afternoons, and elderly care at night. Sleep was a luxury I rarely afforded. I graduated with honors, but the degree came at a high price. I missed important moments in my nephew's lives. I couldn't be present at my grandfather's funeral, and my engagement ended because I simply didn't have time to build a life outside the hospital. But I knew from the first day I put on scrubs that I was born for this. Mount Sinai's emergency surgical unit was known as one of the most intense on the East Coast. We received cases that other hospitals couldn't handle: complex traumas, devastating accidents, situations where every second determined whether someone would live or die. I thrived in that organized chaos, that delicate dance between life and death. It was a frigid February night, the kind of biting cold that makes New York seem even more cruel. The emergency room was operating at maximum capacity, every bed occupied, staff working double shifts, and the constant blare of monitors creating a frantic symphony of urgency. Around 10:45 p.m., we received the call: a serious traffic accident on the Brooklyn Bridge. Multiple casualties on the way. A truck had collided with 3 smaller vehicles. We prepared the rooms, organized the supplies, and waited. When the emergency room doors opened, the scene was pure chaos. Paramedics were rushing about. Blood was everywhere. Screams of pain echoed through the hallways. The most critical victim was a 42-year-old man. Severe chest trauma, massive internal bleeding, multiple fractures, and extremely unstable vital signs. Dr. Marcus Brennan, our chief of surgery, a man known for his coolness under pressure and decades of experience, took command immediately. The operating room became a battlefield. Nurses scurrying back and forth, surgeons working in perfect synchrony, and I stood beside Dr. Brennan, anticipating every movement, every instrument, every need before he even asked. But something was wrong, very wrong. Vital signs began to drop inexplicably. Blood pressure plummeted despite massive transfusions. Heart struggled to keep beating. Monitors displayed numbers that made no sense given the situation we were seeing. And then, that sound. The sound every healthcare professional dreads. The prolonged alarm indicating cardiac arrest. What do you think so far? Leave your opinion in the comments. Chest compressions began immediately. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Adrenaline was administered. Defibrillation. Once, twice, nothing. Dr. Brennan worked with surgical precision, trying every protocol, every known emergency procedure, but the patient was unresponsive. The atmosphere in the room changed. That heavy silence that precedes the inevitable began to settle in. After 27 minutes of continuous efforts, Dr. Brennan stepped back. His voice, normally firm and authoritative, dropped to a weary whisper. This is impossible. We've tried everything. There's nothing more we can do. He glanced at his watch, preparing to call the time of death. But as everyone in the room began to accept defeat, my eyes remained fixed on the monitors. Something was bothering me, something I'd seen but couldn't quite identify. And then I realized a subtle pattern in the heart rate monitor's waveforms, an irregularity that shouldn't be there. This wasn't just a run-of-the-mill cardiac arrest. There was something more, something the standard protocols weren't accounting for. My hands trembled as I mentally reviewed everything I'd learned, every similar case I'd ever seen, and suddenly, a distant memory surfaced. A seminar I'd attended years ago on rare complications in thoracic trauma, a specific case that defied all conventional protocols. "Dr. Brennan," I said, my voice piercing the heavy silence of the room. He looked at me, surprised by the interruption. "We need to consider atypical cardiac tamponade with masked presentation. Thank you so much for sticking with the video this far. The best is yet to come, I promise. You won't believe what happens next." Dr. Brennan stared at me as if I'd spoken in another language. Helena, we've already checked. There's no indication of tamponade on the scans. The classic signs aren't present. He was right, technically, but something inside me screamed that we were missing something crucial. With all due respect, doctor, the classic signs may not manifest in trauma cases of this complexity. I've seen it before. Once, the presentation can be completely atypical. The silence that followed was deafening. Other team members exchanged uncomfortable glances. A nurse questioning the chief of surgery's judgment? That simply didn't happen. Nurse Pierce, Dr. Brennan said, his tone now colder, more distant. I respect your dedication, but this case is closed. We've done everything in our power. Now if you could just time it, but I couldn't move. My eyes returned to the monitors, to that pattern that only I seemed to be seeing. The patient was still technically in cardiac arrest, but there was something there, a microscopic struggle between life and death that wasn't over. Doctor, please, I insisted, my voice firmer now. Give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to try a different approach. If I'm wrong, I take full responsibility. The tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Brennan's jaw clenched. His reputation was on the line. My career was on the line. And a man's life hung by an invisible thread between us. Nurse Pierce, are you suggesting that I, with 32 years of experience in cardiothoracic surgery, am wrong? No, doctor. I'm suggesting that perhaps we're all looking at this problem from the wrong angle, and I have an idea how to fix it. What happened next still gives me chills. Against all protocol, against all established hierarchies, against the common sense of preserving my career, I made a decision. I approached the operating table. Nurse Pierce, what do you think? You're doing? Dr. Brennan's voice echoed through the room, but I had already crossed a line from which there was no return. I picked up the portable ultrasound and positioned the transducer at an unconventional angle, completely different from standard protocol. My hands worked by muscle memory and intuition, guided by that seminar years ago and hundreds of shifts where I learned that sometimes books don't have all the answers. If you take me out of here now, this man will definitely die, I said, without taking my eyes off the ultrasound monitor. If I'm right, he has a chance. The room erupted in conflicting voices. Some staff members tried to pull me away. Others froze, unsure of what to do. Dr. Brennan was visibly furious, but something in his expression wavered. Maybe it was professional curiosity. Maybe it was the reminder that, deep down, we all entered this profession to save lives, not to protect egos. There, I whispered, my eyes fixed on the screen. Do you see it? A buildup of fluid in an unusual location, compressing the heart from an angle that wouldn't show up on a conventional ultrasound. It's not a classic tamponade. It's lateral, hidden behind a fractured bone fragment. That's why we couldn't see it before. Dr. Brennan leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the image. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My entire career hinged on that moment, that flickering image on a tiny screen that few believed was relevant. Prepare for pericardiocentesis, Dr. Brennan ordered abruptly, his voice cutting through the confusion. Modified lateral approach. Now. The room sprang into action immediately. Instruments were prepared, positions adjusted, and for the first time in nearly half an hour, there was hope in the air. Dr. Brennan worked with the precision of a master, but following exactly the path I had indicated. The needle penetrated the space between the ribs at a carefully calculated angle. 15 milliliters of fluid drained, then 20, 30. And then, like a miracle that defied all scientific logic, the monitor began to emit a different sound. A beep, faint, irregular, but present. The heart was trying to beat again. Keep going, I whispered, my hands now holding Dr. Brennan's to maintain the exact angle. Just a little more. 50 milliliters, 60. The beat became louder, more regular. The blood pressure began to rise, slowly at first, then more sharply. 70 over 40, 80 over 50, 90 over 60. The entire room held its breath. Some of the team had tears in their eyes. After 17 minutes of careful procedure, the impossible happened. The patient stabilized. Not completely, not out of danger, but alive. His heart was beating, his body was fighting. And for the first time that endless night, we had a real chance to save him. Dr. Brennan stepped back, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He looked at me, and in that look was a complex mix of emotions, surprise, respect, maybe even a touch of shame. How did you know? He asked, his voice softer now. I didn't know, I answered honestly. I just felt there was still something we could try. The next 3 hours were the most intense of my life. The patient was transferred to the intensive care unit under constant monitoring. Every 15 minutes brought a small improvement. Each hour that passed increased the chances of survival. Dr. Brennan remained at the bedside throughout this entire period, a rare feat for a chief of surgery. He reviewed every monitor, every vital sign, every slight change in the patient's condition. Around 3 in the morning, as the first rays of light began to brighten the Manhattan skyline, the patient opened his eyes for the first time. It was only for a few seconds, but it was enough. He was confused, disoriented, with tubes and wires connected throughout his body, but he was conscious. He was alive. The intensive care team quietly celebrated, but I could only stand there, processing what had happened. I had defied protocol, confronted authority, risked everything I had built in a 17-year career, and it had worked. But as I allowed relief to finally sink in, reality began to weigh on me. What I had done had consequences that would inevitably follow. Dr. Brennan called me into a private room at 6 o'clock in the morning. My stomach tightened. It was time to face the music. "Helena," he began, his expression serious and impenetrable. "What you did tonight was simultaneously the most brilliant and most reckless thing I have ever witnessed in my entire career." He paused, letting the words hang in the cold air of the room. "You saved a life that all of us, myself included, had declared lost, but you also violated hospital protocols, defied direct orders from a superior, and acted in a manner that could be considered gross insubordination. Where are you watching from? Tell us your country or city in the comments." I'd love to hear who's following this incredible story. A formal investigation was opened the next day. The Quality and Patient Safety Department wanted to understand exactly what had happened in that operating room. I was called into endless meetings, where I had to explain and justify every decision, every action, every second of those crucial moments. My colleagues were divided. Some saw me as a heroine who had the courage to do what was necessary. Others saw me as an arrogant nurse who had crossed unacceptable boundaries. Gossip spread through the hospital corridors like wildfire. "Did you hear about Helena? She practically took control of Dr. Brennan's surgery. She saved that guy, but now she could lose everything. Is it worth risking your career like that?" The nights became endless. I couldn't sleep, reliving every moment of that night, wondering if I had done the right thing. Technically, I had violated protocols. There was no denying that. But morally, how could I have stood by and watched a man die when I knew deep down there was something more we could try? My mother called me from Brooklyn, worried. "Helena, my dear," she said in Polish, her voice thick with anxiety. "I heard you're having trouble at work. Are you okay?" I couldn't lie to her. "I don't know, Mom. I did what I thought was right, but now I don't know what the price will be." She was silent for a moment, and then said something I'll never forget. "Do you know why we sold our car to pay for your college? Because we believed you would save lives. And that's exactly what you did. No matter what, you did what you were born to do." The investigation lasted 2 full weeks. They were the longest 14 days of my life. The turnaround came where we least expected it. The case was sent for review by a team of outside experts, including doctors from Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic. They reviewed every detail, every examination, every decision made that night. The final report was presented at a general meeting of the surgery department. I was there, sitting in the last row, braced for the worst. Dr. Edmund Cartwright, a renowned cardiologist from Baltimore, presented the findings. After extensive analysis of this case, we identified a critical flaw in the standard protocol for evaluating cardiac tamponade in complex thoracic trauma. My heart raced. The atypical presentation identified by Nurse Helena Pierce is, in fact, a documented, though extremely rare, condition. It occurs in approximately 0.3% of severe thoracic trauma cases. He paused, looking directly at me. Nurse Pierce's intervention not only saved the patient's life, but also revealed a significant gap in our current protocols. We're recommending that the procedure be incorporated into emergency protocols as a mandatory secondary assessment in similar cases. The room erupted in murmurs. Dr. Brennan, sitting in the front row, turned and looked me in the eye. There was pride there, genuine and undeniable. But the turnaround didn't stop there. The hospital decided not only to shelve the investigation, but also nominated me for a Nursing Excellence Award. My case became study material in medical and nursing schools. Articles were published in specialized journals. And most importantly, the protocol changed. How many lives will be saved in the future because of that split-second decision? We'll never know, but the possibility exists, and that means everything. Today, 5 years after that impossible night, much has changed. The patient we saved, Michael Richardson, a high school history teacher and father of 3, has made a full recovery. He came to me months later when he was finally discharged home. There were no proper words between us, just a long hug and shared tears. He showed me pictures of his children, told me about the plans he had for the future, plans that almost didn't come true. "You gave me a second chance, Helena," he said, "not just with me, but with my entire family. How can I thank you for that?" "You don't need to thank me," I replied. "You just need to live fully." And that's exactly what he has done. My relationship with Dr. Brennan has completely changed. He has become not just a colleague, but a mentor and friend. He recently invited me to co-present a seminar on clinical intuition versus medical protocol. Who would have thought? I still work at Mount Sinai, now as the nursing coordinator in the trauma unit. I use my experience to train new nurses, teaching them that protocols are essential, but that medicine is as much art as science, that sometimes we need to trust our intuition, our experience, that inexplicable feeling that tells us something isn't right. But I also teach that with great power comes great responsibility, that challenging authority must be done respectfully, based on solid knowledge, and always, always, with the patient's well-being as the absolute priority. That February night taught me that impossible is just a word we use when we give up too soon, that sometimes the difference between life and death lies in having the courage to question, to look beyond the obvious, to believe that there's always one more thing to try. And that's the lesson I carry with me every day. So, what do you think of this story? Do you believe that sometimes we need to trust our intuition even when everyone around us tells us we're wrong? Have you ever experienced a situation where you had to go against the grain to do what was right? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read them all and love hearing about your experiences. If you've made it this far and enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss future stories. And there's an incredible video I recommend right there about another medical case that defied all expectations. Click and continue this journey with me. Thank you for being here.